Hi everyone, thank you for having me here. Let's dive into the different offerings from Spark and what you're able to build on top of them. Little house cleaning. Spark is part of the Maker ecosystem. Our main goal is to basically encourage and grow the DAI ecosystem. And we're doing that through building DeFi infrastructure. So as of now, there we go. We have three main offerings, one being Spark Conduits. This is essentially liquidity for your protocol. Then we have Spark Lend, which is a lending marketplace where you're able to borrow DAI at a predictable rate. And I'll go a little bit in depth into that afterwards. And finally, SDAI, the savings DAI or the yield-bearing stablecoin based on DAI. Awesome. Okay, so Spark Conduits. This is something that is currently still in development. It will be launched next year in Q2. But it really boils down to Maker providing liquidity directly to different protocols. Think about this as a non-BS LP into your protocol, and also at very, very large scale. In essence, you can think of conduits as adapters. It's essentially part of this bigger picture, which is the Maker allocation system. And then in yellow, that would be the adapter. You would have an adapter per protocol. And it'll be from the point of view, it will be a singleton contract, meaning that the different sub-DAOs will be using the same conduit to actually provide liquidity to different protocols. Another way of thinking about them is a deposit box. At the end of the day, the only strict requirement that you have when building on the interface is having a deposit and a withdrawal function. That is the base minimum level. From there on, you can build either logic on the conduit itself, or you can have all that logic push into the protocol, the liquidity pool that the conduit is looking at. In a very simple terms, a sub-DAO, and for the sake of the hackathon, you can mock this as a simple EOA. The sub-DAO will make a decision of putting 10 million into the conduit, and this conduit will be looking either connected directly into your liquidity pool. Let's say you have a lending market, which is the case of Spark Lend. The sub-DAO will be providing DAI directly into the DAI pool, earning that yield, and then at any point the sub-DAO will call the withdraw function and take it back. If we think about more complex examples, you would look at maybe something with real assets related, where the moment that the DAI goes to the protocol, it actually gets off-chain, so there's a bit of delay in terms of conversions and movement of funds. So at that point, you need to kind of take care of logic of how you can do this, of ramping, how can the sub-DAO claim back the money, or how the protocol can communicate with the sub-DAO in terms of capital requirements or any of that sort. Okay. I'll go a little more in depth into conduits later on, in case there's any specific questions, mainly on the documentation. Now we can jump on to Spark Lend. So Spark Lend is a lending marketplace, very similar to all the ones that are out there. The very important thing is that you're able to borrow DAI at a predictable rate, meaning that really the rate is not based on utilization. So essentially you can borrow on a limited amount of DAI. And it's very importantly, the rate changes based on a vote from governance at Maker. So you have a minimum of 2 weeks notice for the rate that will change, and also what rate it will be in the future. This is kind of works towards the better user experience when you're borrowing a stablecoin. We have two sides. We have DAI, and now we also have USDC and USDT that you're able to provide as on a siloed mode, but also you have ETH and staked ETH and Rocket ETH. So you're able to run emote on either side, and again, it's based on the pool construct. You can pretty much build anything. I think the important thing here is take advantage of the predictable rate on DAI market, but you can build on top of it, or you can also build tooling related to the lending marketplace, and also works. A good example of this is liquidation bots. This is something that we're always very interested in encouraging open source work on this. Lastly, we're on mainnet. There's a version on Girly that is not fully up to date. We're also on Gnosis chain. We're not on the cheetah on the testnet for Gnosis chain. We're trying to encourage everyone to use local forks rather than running on public testnets. You'll still be able to do everything you want on Gurley. If you need DAI on Gurley, I found some. I can send you some. But also, if you want to actually run a local testnet, let me know, and I'll help you set it up. We can be using internally. It's been working out pretty nicely. Yeah, a little bit just to chill a little bit on the predictable rates. This is kind of what you're going to be seeing. So this, for a lot of integrations that you build on top of lending markets, this actually kind of takes care of a lot of your issues when having to deal with like spikes and borrow rates. All right, SDAI, or Savings DAI, the final product. This is a yield-bearing stablecoin based on DAI. It's DAI in the DSR module. So let's start first with that section. At Maker, the DAI savings rate module has been there since the inception of the protocol. It simply hasn't never been used because it usually is to encourage more demand of the token. Maker has actually been struggling for the most part with creating enough supply to meet the current demand. Therefore, it hasn't been used. Maker has finally figured out the supply side of the system. Therefore, now they're able to increase the rate and actually offer this to users. The yield is coming from the revenues of the protocol, but said the profits of the protocol. Right now, 2/3 of it are coming from treasury bills, and 1/3 of it is coming from ETH vaults from the Maker CDP system or the Maker vaults classically. This users have to deposit DAI into the DSR. This is a very old school contract, so you actually get no receipt back when you deposit. So community members have traditionally created wrappers. A very old school one is called Chai, and now the new one based on the standard 4626 is SDAI. Big important caveat here is the standard doesn't impose transfer event emissions at burning or minting. A lot of tokens have used it either way. You duplicate a bit of gas, but at the same time, it's easier to integrate. With SDAI, we don't have that, meaning that if you're going to be basically depositing, if you're going to be, your protocol is going to be involved in minting or burning SDAI, you're going to be looking at those two events down there, deposit and withdraw. That's the only major difference. Everything else is pretty much standard. Couple of things. It's a vault token, so it doesn't rebase. It simply accrues interest in time. Therefore, basically its value goes up in time. When it comes to the hackathon specifically, it's very easy to integrate a token in your project, but we are very critical of being a very special use case for a yield-bearing stablecoin itself. Easy litmus test on this is if you swap SDAI for a completely different token, does your project still work? Does it do what it's intended to do? If it's a yes, then the integration is not meaningful enough. Just to give you an example, for a meaningful integration, lossless donations. So a user deposits 100 DAI, the protocol swaps it to SDAI and then diverts the yield to NGOs. And then when the user withdraws, it's still 100 DAI, therefore haven't lost anything, only the opportunity cost. But on this, please come reach out. Let's talk about the ideas that you're working on. Happy to jam on them and figure out like the best fit for this. I think SDAI, that should be complete. There's not much to it. Just a reminder of the bounties. And now is there any questions on this point? If not, I'm going to talk a little bit about the conduits themselves. No takers? Cool. I'll get a little bit into this. Okay, so conduits. Still a very ethereal kind of concept. We're kind of working on it as well. So if you have any suggestions of how to explain it better, very thankful for that. The way I like to think about it is a direct pipeline into your protocol. It's liquidity coming from Maker. So rather than you go in and doing liquidity mining or marketing to get users to deposit, you're basically going through an assessment process at Maker where the protocol builds the conduit or the adapter into it. You're connecting the Maker allocation system to your protocol. You go through a series of assessments, again, not part of the hackathon. But once it's live, any sub-DAO can deposit funds into your protocol. Under this Maker allocation system where Maker governance essentially has an admin control over the whole system. The main thing here is so there's two things here in the documentation. We have an overview of what conduits are, and then this is the Sparkland conduit specific implementation. This is not live yet. Sparkland does get essentially a credit line from Maker today, but it's with the old school system that we call the D3M. D3M simply says, it looks at an external contract, says, based on this rate on Sparkland, I will provide X amount of liquidity. And it basically runs on that. In the future, conduits are more of a generalized approach. So you can build this same logic into it, but you can also build a bunch of different logics, as well as just have no logic whatsoever, and it's simply a very manual process of depositing and withdrawing based on some governance decision, for example. So this will be a real overkill for the hackathon, mainly because this basically takes into account the entire process of the allocation system. For example, the buffer registry, the roles, it's all part of this. All this, you can just simplify it into an EOA, and you simply say, hey, sub-DAO B, send money here, and then you could take care of the rest of the product. Quite important is if your protocol won't be able to provide in the next block liquidity, let's say you're a lending market, the sub-DAO provides liquidity into you, and you're at 100% utilization, the question then comes in, okay, how can the sub-DAO maker be able to pull the liquidity? So caveats into there are kind of what kind of differentiates your project from others when it comes to conduits. Just to give an example, this is currently being scrapped and reworked on, but the team here for Sparkland had essentially I look at withdrawal, but this is not necessarily the best thing, but essentially a request of funds function that it would call this function to the conduit, and basically if there wasn't enough liquidity in the market, it would send a message to Sparkland to increase interest rates to be able to recoup enough liquidity to then send it back. Turned out there's a lot of edge cases that weren't well treated for that. But this is kind of the idea behind this. You don't need to add too much logic into the conduit itself, but you do have to have these scenarios where what's happening in the worst case scenario, what will happen, or what would go on, essentially. Okay. I think that's all I wanted to say. This is a nice example. It's very simple, and again, it only implements the deposit and withdraw functions and nothing else. And then just has some invariant testing that we're always very happy to see when people provide to hackathons. Now, if there's still no questions, I'm going to go and show you some project ideas and past hackathon examples. Let's go here. All right, hackathon's ideas, and these are ideas are basically not based on building directly on top of these three systems, just something around them, more like tooling. So someone that doesn't have protocol engineering background, it's more than design side, you can do visual mementos. So this is how you can easily, what's the best way to communicate or people to share either their positions or information about their SDAI or their Sparkland positions. So I'm a personal fan of, come on, Larry. What's going on? There was a little nice thing that Larry had from I forget what protocol. Cool, I can't do this. Basically showing, hey, this is my position. I am plus 50 cent, in profit, something like that. So for someone that doesn't want to code that. The other one is liquidation bot. We currently have, my team has built a open source liquidation bot. There's also other versions of it, like the Paradigm. They created a framework called Termis as well. So if you're interested in this, also we're very interested in seeing implementations of liquidation bots and how you can deal with them. We currently have a quite basic liquidation system. Essentially, if your position goes under 1, half of your position gets liquidated. So anything that can add logic on top of that and make them a little bit better, I don't know, DeFi Saver with their auto repayment system, or CRV USD which essentially is the same thing, with their soft liquidations. That will also be a very interesting idea for a hackathon. User analytics. I'm a big fan of analytics, so if you want to work on that only, very happy to support that. We can look at things such as from the risk perspective, but also on the growth and churn perspective, how the system is performing, comparison against competitors. A big thing, for example, that takes a lot of time and effort is parameterization. So deciding what's going to be the kink or the interest rate. I'm going to quickly show you. In every market, apart from so this is essentially what it looks like having a stable, predictable rate, right? Completely flat, doesn't care what utilization it has. But for the most part, if you go, for example, to Ethereum, you basically have two curves. You have the first curve, you have the kink, and then you have the second curve. It takes a lot of time to actually build this and modify this. And of course, we're in direct competition with Aave and Compound and other lending marketplaces. So in response to someone else changing their rates, we also adjust ours. So and a project built on top of that was also extremely interesting. Yeah, I put here a bunch of examples on user behavior. Something I personally want to see built is an easy way to call Web3 data from Google Sheets. That's also something that I would actually use every day. Then moving on, more on the, let's say, automation or kind of abstraction side. Let's say the simplest implementation for this would be kind of like the one-click recursive leverage, similar to what Summerfy or InstaDApp gives you. But then you can also do an unwinding, deleveraging on the same side, creating a stop-loss system as well. A previous hackathon project was building a Uni v4 hook that acts as a stop-loss to Sparkline positions. So stuff like that also very interesting. I'm going to stop saying very interesting. Finally, an alerting system. I think right now there's no amazing tool to just simply for user themselves to create a very easy alert based on what the borrow rate is in the system, in the market, or a monitoring of the position outside of like a cron job. There's been companies attempting to do this. The most successful one called HAL XYZ actually got acquired by Infura, so they're no longer providing the service. So an open source competitor would be amazing. Now, quite important and actually more interesting with the idea of like bundling different sponsor bounties together. We're particularly interested when it comes to conduits. If you're creating a conduit that links to another sponsor's liquidity pools and so on, that makes a lot of sense. The very important thing about conduits is its liquidity at scale. So you can have a great use case, for example, community borrowing and lending, but it does not require 100 million in liquidity into your pool. So this is kind of the way you should think. If you're doing that scale, it should be conduits. If you're doing a small thing, it should be more like Sparkland or SDAI. And yeah, not beautiful, but here are the past hackathon projects. You can check them out. They're a bit mix between conduits, SDAI, and Sparkland. I'm going to leave it out there. I'm not going to open all the links. And now we have about 8 minutes of Q&A. If you guys have any questions, if not, I'll just like ramble on by myself. Nada? Okay. Then, yeah. Yep.
Early, so it's not super updated, like.
Meaning you're gonna be by now you're gonna be missing. I think nothing substantial. And yeah, the only substantial thing is that early you won't have USDC and USDT enabled, which we do have on mainnet. I think that's the only main thing. Then you're gonna have all parameters, but you don't care too much about that. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, everything's there. Like it's not bricked yet. Yeah.
Your family is something else.
If you want to bridge stuff, more than happy to see that. But unfortunately, we don't have it available anywhere else apart from Girly. I think there's a previous hackathon winner that bridged the entire thing into I think Polygon CKVM or Polygon, which is like I was like great job. A lot left for just to show the use case on Polygon, but yeah. Nothing else. All right, perfect. Well, thank you very much. I'm going to be at booth and just hanging here until probably midnight and also all day tomorrow. So yeah, happy hacking.